Every now and then, a car that defies every rule is born.
As you turn around the corner, the last thing you plan on hearing is some popping. Any noises when driving can be a sign of something that's seriously wrong. If you hear a popping noise when turning, it's best to figure out the underlying issues before further damage occurs. In this guide, we cover the reasons to hear a popping noise through a turn. Once you know what's causing it, you'll also be able to fix it. At the end of this article, we try to answer your top questions as well. Today on Trinix Auto Fix. Causes of a popping noise when turning. The most common reasons for a popping noise when turning are a broken coil spring, a bad strut mount, defective struts, or a bad ball joint. It could also be worn control arm bushings or bad CV joints, all of which can be repaired. Here is a more detailed list of the most common causes of a popping noise when turning. 1. Broken coil spring. The coil spring is a vital component of the car suspension. Most cars are equipped with these springs. Coils can last for the lifetime of your vehicle but are also prone to damage, especially if you drive on rough roads. When the coil spring breaks, you'll hear a popping sound, as well as knocking or clunking. It can also lead to misalignment, causing trouble controlling the vehicle while driving. If left unchecked, the bad springs will further cause tire tread damage. Because you don't want to replace tires too, it's best to have this problem resolved as soon as you can. 2. Bad strut mount. If your vehicle has a front strut assembly, the mount may have failed. The strut assembly is necessary to dampen the shock from driving on the road. It's also a pivot point for your car's steering system. The mount contains a bearing that provides the pivoting function. If the mount is worn, a popping sound is going to be more pronounced when you are making a turn. A bad strut can also lead to tire wear or steering vibrations. 3. Defective struts. It's also possible that the struts have failed. These parts act as the shock absorber in conjunction with the spring coils. Within the strut cylinder, there is gas or liquid, along with a piston. If the strut goes bad or it gets stuck, the suspension won't absorb impact the same way. While it won't cause damage to the vehicle, there will be a strange popping noise heard from the wheels. 4. Worn or damaged ball joint. Ball joints are part of the suspension and steering system. They allow the steering knuckles to pivot while turning because the ball joints are connected to the steering knuckle. Tie rods are also part of this system, responsible for transferring motion from the steering gear to the knuckles. If either of these parts fails, you may hear a popping noise or clunking. This noise is more pronounced when you are taking a turn or curve. 5. Worn control arm bushings. Control arms connect the suspension to the frame of the vehicle. Attached to the control arms are bushings. When the bushings fail, you will hear a popping, clicking or snapping when you turn the steering wheel. This noise will eventually get worse, possibly becoming a squeaking sound. 6. Bad CV joints. If your vehicle is front-wheel drive, it will have constant velocity CV axles. These axles transfer the rotational force from the engine to the front wheels via the transaxle. With every CV axle, there is also an outer and inner CV joint. These joints are responsible for allowing the axle shaft to move in the up and down motion while traveling over bumps. The outer joints are also needed for pivoting, allowing the front wheels the movement for turning. When the CV joints begin to wear, you are going to hear popping, snapping or clicking noise when turning and accelerating. How to fix a popping noise when turning. Once you can't take the popping noise anymore, it's time to fix the problem. To diagnose and repair the issue as a professional, you need to follow the same steps they do. As professional mechanics, we know exactly how to get the car sound free once again. Here are some general steps to follow. 1. Determine which side it's coming from. Before you get started, consider reading the factory service manual for your vehicle. This manual will show you all of the diagrams and parts that you will be inspecting. Any recommended procedures will also be outlined. To figure out what is going on, you must first determine what side of the car the noise is coming from. If it's difficult to tell from inside the vehicle, have a friend join you for the ride. Sometimes, it helps to listen from multiple spots in the car while going through turns. The two of you can compare notes and narrow down the location. 2. Inspect coil springs and strut mount. You must perform a visual check on the coil springs and strut mount. Springs are found near the wheel above the axle. If you lift the vehicle, you'll be able to see broken springs or strut mounts much easier. However, not all breaks in the spring are easy to notice. If the break occurs in the middle, you may have to do a little more investigation. 3. Inspect suspension and bushings. Next, you want to inspect the boots and bushings for any signs of wear. As you examine under the vehicle, work at the wheel where you hear the noise first. If the bushings are separating or the suspension appears worn, you want to prepare for replacement. Don't forget to look for excessive play in the tie rod ends. Begin at the power steering box and move from the arms to the wheels. The tie rod ends are the connection point between the wheels and the power steering box. If the bushings are compromised, you need to replace them. 4. Replace broken parts. Whatever problem you found through the initial examination should be repaired. In many cases, it's best to replace suspension parts in pairs. Therefore, if you have a bad coil spring on one side, you may as well replace the other one at the same time. Because the other spring is worn, only installing one can change the ride height and balance of the vehicle. While you are working on the suspension system, it's best to replace anything that looks worn. For example, if you are replacing springs because one broke, you may also want to inspect the ball joints, bushings and other vital components in case they need replaced as well. If something looks like it may not last much longer, just go ahead and replace it to be safe. 5. Contact a professional. If you aren't sure that you can perform the repair yourself, it's best to get help from a professional mechanic. If you don't know how to find a good repair shop, we advise you to talk with family and friends for their recommendations. According to a report performed by AAA a few years ago, the average mechanic costs between $47 and $215 per hour. This is a small price to pay compared with what you might spend if you try to fix the suspension yourself and mess it up. Thanks for watching.